Good afternoon. Welcome to this episode of Norfolk Community Forum. My name is Kevin Kalkut, the chair of the Norfolk Select Board, and I am joined today by our town administrator, Blythe Robinson. How are you doing, Blythe?
I'm good, Kevin. How are you?
Very good, thank you. So this show is intended to be able to recap all of the happenings going around town in a nice consolidated little package so that you can review and identify the items that may be important or impactful to you. We'll be going through a couple of hot topics that are currently going around town. We will welcome our guest for today to provide some insight on our department spotlight. And then we'll go through a couple of the upcoming items of note. So to kick us off, Blythe, we had our fall town meeting last week.
We did on November 17th. It was a short warrant. We had 8 articles to discuss, and town meeting finished its business in a little over an hour. The things that we took care of at town meeting included some budget transfers that we needed to do before we set the tax rate and send out the final 2 bills of the year. I'm pleased to say that we only redistributed some additional state aid that we hadn't known about in June, and redistributed some monies that were already in the budget. We spent no new money at that meeting. We took care of some capital expenditures the town needed to make for things like trucks and road repair and police cars through 2 various articles. We accepted Silver Fox Road, a street that was built a couple of years ago. The town also agreed to purchase from the state 43 acres of land off of Pond Street adjacent to the recreation complex from the state for about $17,000, which will allow us to expand that property at some point in the future when the town's ready to do that. And there was an article to change some rules about the keeping of animals and noises that they make to update a section of our general bylaws. That was by a citizen petition, and that did not pass. So that's kind of a recap of the things that we took care of this fall.
Thanks, Blythe. And I think it's important to note that in order to be able to get a citizen's petition on the fall town meeting warrant, you're required to obtain 100 signatures from registered voters in town. And that's no easy task, especially given the pandemic that we're in right now. So the resident that did do this showed an incredible amount of dedication, and I thought did a great job at town meeting presenting her point and why she was doing what she did. So while the motion did not pass, we did invite her to come to our pre-planning meetings for Springtown meeting, where the select board will be putting forward some potential changes to Article 13 in our bylaws related to animal control. So hopefully we'll be able to find some great middle ground and get her concerns addressed as we move into Springtown meeting.
Sure, yes.
All right, our next item is the foreclosure auction.
So the town over the years had obtained 15 different parcels of land through foreclosure. Unfortunately, owners of those properties lost them, and through the process of the courts, the town obtained them for non-payment. We held an auction by which we were able to sell those properties to new buyers who wanted them for various uses. One of the properties was one with a single family house on it. Some were buildable lots, and some were small parcels of land that abutted, something that someone else owned, like a little sliver next to their house. The reason we did it is because we're receiving no taxes on those properties, and that, it kind of hurts everybody else in town who's paying their taxes on time. So we held an auction on Town Hill on the gazebo. It was a beautiful, almost summer day, it seemed like. And we sold 9 of them, and the town has brought in just over $400,000. That money goes into the general fund, and it will be part of our free cash next year to spend on whatever purposes town meeting determines. And the good news for all taxpayers is those properties go back on the tax rolls, and people paying what they're valued at, what they're worth going forward. So it's a benefit to everybody. It's not the sort of thing we do all the time. We do have a couple other properties that we're taking through the process, and when we have a sufficient number again, we'll do that again, and we'll advertise it on our website as we did this time.
Great, thanks, Blythe. And I think the big question that was out there was, I don't know if we had seen something like this done in recent history. Do you happen to know when the last time we did this was?
It was definitely a few years ago. As I said, it's not the kind of thing a town does every year. It takes a long time for the courts to process somebody not paying their taxes to when the town actually owns it. And we're never able to obtain those unpaid taxes. But what it means is someone can buy that property free and clear with no obligation except to pay the taxes going forward. So it's kind of a win-win for the person who finally buys it, and it's a win for the town to get them back to, if you will, an income producing asset for the community.
Awesome, thank you, Blythe.
Yep.
The next item that we wanted to highlight was the long-awaited Holbrook Street well project. Where are we with this?
We have broken ground on that. We awarded a contract earlier this fall, and work started the week of November 16th to put the actual water main in the ground from the well site up to Rockwood Road and tie it into the system. And the next step is to actually build a building and put all of the infrastructure in it that will treat the water once it comes out of the ground. The actual wells, underground wells, because that we need, there's 6 of them. Those were completed earlier this year, and so the final step was to build the building and all the infrastructure, build the driveway into it and hook it into the whole system. We fully expect to have this well field online before next summer, which is critical because summertime, as you might imagine, is our highest use. And this will enable us to have that third redundant source when our needs are the greatest.
Absolutely, and the operative word that you used there was redundancy. I keep hearing a lot. We had these challenges last summer. There was all these restrictions in place. We're really looking forward to Holbrook Street coming online so that we don't have to worry about that anymore. And I don't think that generally people understand that this is not intended to be the solve all for our issues related to water consumption. This is intended to be able to give our other 2 wells a break or the ability to be able to service them. So could you guys speak to that for a quick moment?
Oh, you're absolutely, I'm so glad you said that. That is the most important thing. This does not actually give us the right to pull any more water out of the ground. The state actually limits the amount of water that any community can pump in a given year. And this one has a maximum as well per day. But this summer, when people were using more water, whether for their personal use or water their lawn, which does happen, we actually had to shut down one of the other wells from time to time and buy water from the town of Rentham. And we were fortunate that Rentham was able to sell us water, but there could be situations where they couldn't. And so we still need people to be vigilant about being careful about their water use. But we need to make sure that we don't pump our other wells so hard that we lose their capacity. That would be even worse. So redundancy is the key word.
Thanks very much, Blythe. And so the fourth item for today is probably the most front and center item that we've been talking about over the course of the last 2 weeks, and that is the recent COVID spike that the community has experienced. We've had some communications put out. We've been updating the website. We've had some back and forth with multiple points of contact at the state public health. Perhaps you could just give us a little bit of an intro into what's been going on.
So unfortunately, the surge that the country has been concerned about coming this fall did happen, and it happened here in Norfolk as well as many other places. I've been updating the website since we started doing this in March, and for weeks on end, we would have 1 new case, 2 new cases. It was quite small, but in the last month, our numbers have been jumping up. And as of what we posted yesterday, we have a total of 366 cases. There is a large portion that is considered to be facility related, and the state defines that in Norfolk as the Norfolk MCI prison. But I can tell you that the most recent data that we did post yesterday indicates that the cases there seem to have are not increasing from last week. And so the new cases that we have, and there were 26 new ones yesterday from last Thursday, are in the community. And so I'm glad to have this opportunity to remind people that following all the safety protocols that we've been hearing about for months are so critically important. I know that when Dr. Ilardi speaks, she's and experiencing this in the school communities every day, and um, everything that people can do to take care, wash your hands, wear your mask, avoid large gatherings. None of us can say enough.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, some of the numbers to be able to correlate to that situation. I mean, on the 29th of October, the report that we had from the state had Norfolk sitting at 51 total cases since the
Right.
beginning of reporting. And as you mentioned, over the course of 4 reports, we are now at 366 total cases. And,
Correct.
a lot of the frustration from the community has been centered around our inability to be able to provide definitive breakouts between what's associated to the MCI Norfolk facility and what's dedicated to the community. And as you touched on, as of recently, we do believe that, a good portion of what's coming through in terms of new cases is considered within the community. And we should be treating it as such in terms of how we are responding. Do you have any other feedback or anything you can share related to the state's preference of sharing facility cases versus community cases?
Absolutely. They're very strongly caution against it. There are, as people have likely heard over the years, there's something called HIPAA that governs what information we can provide about people's medical situation and whatnot. And so from the very beginning, and echoed by our Board of Health, they wanted things reported at the macro level. And so, and we did, when we heard that people were aware of the cases at the facility in Norfolk, we did try to be, responsible to that and assure people we knew what was going on. But unfortunately, I think people were hoping that we would continue to give them granular level detail that we just can't. And so, I would apologize. I know people would like to hear it. And in one sense, we'd like to be able to share that with them, but asking them to understand that we just can't.
Absolutely. And, the second most asked about impact related to these COVID spikes has been what impact that would have on our school education model. So as a segue into our next section, we'd like to introduce our guest today, who is the Norfolk Public Schools Superintendent, Dr. Ingrid Ilardi. Welcome, Dr. Ilardi. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure.
So as we were talking about, COVID has become front and center in terms of issues facing our community right now. I mean, not just our community, but the state and the nation as a whole. So that being said, aside from our inability to be able to get down to granular levels of reporting between facilities and the community, the second most requested question as it relates to the impact is how it impacts our education model. Are you able to speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So back in August, we presented recommendations to the school committee, and they approved a reopening plan for the fall. At that time, we had proposed a hybrid learning model, and we are also offering a remote-only option for families whose children at this time are not able to be in-person learning for various reasons. So at this time, we have about 107 of our students overall that are in remote-only classrooms. And the remaining about 890 students are participating in that hybrid model. The way the hybrid model was structured was that we have students, we divided each class into 2 cohorts to reduce the number of students that would be physically present in the building at any time. And that allows us to adhere to all of the CDC and the Department of Public Health guidelines for social distancing, as well as to be able to provide students with mask breaks and spaces for lunch where they can remain 6 feet apart, because they're required to be 6 feet apart when they don't have a mask on. So we had to balance that as well. So our students come into in-person learning 2 days a week. We have shifted the platform so that on a typical day, students would come in, they would have their direct instruction. They also have a lunch break, a recess break, and then they go to a special subject. We've transitioned for the time being all of our specials instruction to the remote days. And that allows us to maximize academic instruction during in-person learning days. We are just completing the first quarter of the school year. As we had said during our August meeting when we presented this plan to the school committee, we sent out a parent survey 6 to 8 weeks. We had said 6 to 8 weeks after opening to gather feedback on how things are going. We wanted to hear from parents what's working, what challenges they're facing. And we have indicated at that time, once we got that data and had a chance to analyze it, we'll make adjustments to our hybrid remote learning models. I would say we sent out the summary of all the parent surveys to everybody in the community last week. Some of the key themes that I would highlight at this time are overall parents participating in the hybrid learning are reporting very positive feedback about the in-person learning days. They are reporting that kids are really excited and happy to go to school, which we love to hear. We're happy to have them back. Parents are reporting that students are really getting to know their peers and enjoying that social contact that they had been missing throughout the spring, and that they are successful with the academic expectations when they come home, any assignments they have to complete as a result of the in-person learning days. We've received the same feedback from staff who are thrilled to have students back in person. Our staff are reporting they're getting to spend more individual time and individual support when they have smaller groups of students in school. We have just done our fall and benchmarks of assessment, and we've done screening to determine any students that may be showing regression of skills from the spring closure. At this time, we're starting to unpack that data. We're happy to report that our students seem to be recouping skills very quickly. We don't see significant gaps in instruction and learning at this time, although we are working to remediate some of those gaps with individual students based on their own individual screening results. The feedback that we had for parents on areas of improvement was really very consistent across the parent survey. Parents are saying that the remote only days are challenging, especially parents that are juggling multiple students at home and juggling work responsibilities as well. They're saying that students need more support to access, especially at the younger grade levels, to access their learning and to complete assignments. At the upper grades, we're hearing that parents are really looking for more direct instruction and live instruction on those remote learning days. I also meet monthly with the parent leaders group, and I had a chance to share the results of the surveys with them and to see if the themes that we were hearing resounded and resonated. And I would say that group pretty universally supported the same feedback that parents are feeling that students really need more instruction on those remote days. The other thing that was fairly consistent between the parent leaders group and the parent survey is that the special subjects instruction, the schedule for that is challenging. So we are re-looking at how we're delivering that non-academic instruction in art, music, and physical education. What the public may not be aware of is because of the current hybrid model that we have doubled the amount of classes all of our specialists are teaching. So where if your child was in Miss Balfour's class, you would have art 1 day a week. Now Miss Balfour's class has art twice a week, once for cohort A and once for cohort B. So they're teaching twice as many classes. We also were short a music teacher for the first 8 weeks of school at H Holiday. So we had one teacher teaching twice as many classes for two buildings. So the schedule was a little bit challenging at first. But we did concentrate the delivery of the non-academic instruction intentionally on the remote days. One, to increase the amount of time we can spend on core academic subjects when kids are in person, but also to give students on those remote days a chance to interact with another teacher, to have some live content. But what we're hearing from families is it's really hard to manage that schedule. If you're at home, you're in the middle of remote learning and you have to remind your child they have a live art class that they have to log into. That's been hard for our parents. So we are looking at how to restructure that, and we are looking at how to increase remote direct instruction on those days that students are not in person. We've been working with our classroom teachers and really looking at the data and looking at the curriculum to determine what is the best way to deliver this and how would we maybe make that shift. We do expect that we'll be implementing some things, particularly at the upper grades 3 to 6, immediately after the Thanksgiving break. So we're hopeful that that will make the learning more accessible for families. Once we will trial some of these things through December and gather more feedback and then make official adjustments to our models coming in January. But we do want to let people know we are hearing that feedback. We are really looking at it in a thoughtful way and will be responding to that. As you said, Kevin, earlier, one of the things that we are struggling with is the spike in cases. We have, as you've said, it's difficult because we can't break out everything from the facilities cases to the community, but there is definitely an increase in community transmission in Norfolk. We're seeing that in the schools, and we're seeing the impact of that. What's challenging is that we often, when we get notice of a positive case, we have set protocols in place. So if it's during the day, the child would be isolated, we would clean and disinfect the area, we would do contact tracing, we would send out notice, but that's not the path that it's been taking lately. Most of the notices that we're getting are coming in late at night, 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. I don't know if that's because labs are behind and the results are being published later, but as soon as we receive results, the first thing that we do is work with the public health nurse to identify timelines, when the student was diagnosed, when they were symptomatic, so that we can track when they would have been infectious. Anybody that they would have come in contact with during the period of time they were infectious is considered a close contact if they were within 6 feet for 15 minutes or more over 24 hours. So in those cases, our school nurses make individual phone calls to every single close contact to advise them that they have potentially been exposed, the requirements for quarantine, and how to proceed with getting testing. We've had to make some decisions in different cases about transitioning a class to remote learning. Basically, what we look at first is the period of exposure, the number of close contacts. If a number of students in a class were potentially close contacts, we may transition that whole class to remote instruction for a 2-week period, the length of the quarantine. We've had several cases over the last couple of weeks at the H. Olive Day School. We have not had to transition the whole school to remote learning there. And that's primarily because the big question that we have when we have new cases, is there any evidence of potential school-based transmission? If we have 2 or 3 cases in one building, but they're all discrete cases with no overlap, and we know the origin of those cases, then we can be confident that there's no potential spread that's happening within the school. And we will continue to remain open, even though the community is in red. I think we really are committed to trying to provide as much direct in-person live instruction as we can. In other cases, if we get notice of a potential positive case, or what we had yesterday actually with Freeman was notice of a positive case and 2 potential positive cases. In that situation, when that notice comes in late too, we do have to assess, is it possible that there's school-based transmission in these cases, which involves additional contract tracing and additional consultation with the public health nurse, as well as our school nursing team. And in those cases, we always consult with the public health department and go with the direction that they provide us. If there is potential school-based transmission, we will transition the whole school to remote. The recommendations are for 24 to 48 hours, so you can complete a deep, thorough, comprehensive cleaning and sanitizing of all building spaces, keep windows open, and also complete any residual contact tracing and notification that needs to be done. So we're following those protocols very, very closely. As Blythe said, we do see an increase in cases. We expect that all of our kids will be back full in-person learning. We closed for 1 day today. Tomorrow is already a remote day, and we expect all students to be back in full on Monday. I would echo what Blythe said. The best thing that we can do is to really ask the community to support and follow those public health guidelines. The more we can do to mitigate spread in the community, the better chances we have of remaining and keeping schools open and kids live in person. So mask wearing, social distancing, hand washing. We really encourage people to adhere to the CDC guidelines for the Thanksgiving vacation. Don't travel if you don't have to, and try to limit gatherings at home to small numbers of immediate family. Again, when there is new cases at the school, or there are a number of new cases, it does have an impact on our delivery model. So we really appreciate, our parents have been fantastic about keeping kids home if they show any signs or symptoms, notifying us if they've been notified they're a close contact, sharing information. That communication is really valuable. And again, anything people can do to adhere to those guidelines and keep the community healthy improves our chances of staying open and even moving forward to a position where we may be able to bring more students back for more in-person learning time. So those would be general where we are. And again, I want to assure parents that the feedback that you have provided is really important to us. It takes some time to make adjustments to a program and to a model, and we are working really hard at that, and we'll be responding to that feedback. I expect we'll see some more live instruction right after we get back from Thanksgiving, especially at the upper grade levels. And we will be probably relooking at revamping what we're doing with our specials beginning after the first of the year.
Thank you, Ingrid. That's a wonderful update. Such valuable information. I really appreciate that. And all that you and your team are doing to deliver school in these really tough times. It's impressive. So thank you for that. And I know part of what you have to focus on, maybe not every day these days, but is budget. And we were able to restore some of the funding to the school at the special town meeting. Perhaps you can just tell us a little bit about what you're using that for.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to say, just take this opportunity, I do want to recognize all of our teaching staff and support staff and our administrators have been working incredibly, incredibly hard to try to keep things running and to provide the best instruction possible. I'll tell you, I go into school, we have teachers there at 6:30 in the morning and teachers there at 8 o'clock at night, administrators working every weekend. We're hearing from people, even our veteran teachers who've been teaching for 20 years, it's like being a first-year teacher all over again, because you have to change everything. We've had to rewrite curriculum, we've had to transition. So I just want to credit them for all of the hard work and effort. We're so fortunate that we have such a dedicated staff. So as far as budget, we were really appreciative that the town was able to return about $85,000 to the school budget at the fall town meeting. As you probably remember, back in the spring, we actually reduced $285,000. So we are not where we were, but we're definitely in a better position moving forward than we were. The positions that we had to reduce as a result of budget cuts, we reduced an assistant principal position. We had been hoping to have a full-time assistant principal in each building. We reduced the additional building principal assistant, and we had to cut a position. So we actually don't have any administrative support right now. We don't have assistants at either building. We also had to cut a technology teacher and a school psychologist, as well as some of the, we had hoped to add additional time for an occupational therapist and a team chair. Those were things that were reduced back in the spring. This additional $85,000 will help us try to bring some of those positions back. But I have to say, at this point, we are still waiting to determine or to hear whether or not there's going to be additional stimulus funding for public education, because we have some additional costs that are not budgeted for that we have to meet. So as we talked about earlier I don't even remember now, over the summer and early fall, we added custodial positions to each building because we had to increase the frequency of cleaning and sanitizing the buildings. We also are looking to add a remote learning support teacher who will be able to provide coaching and individual teaching and learning for students that are on during the remote days, or students that might have to quarantine for medical reasons. Those are all new positions. So if there is no additional stimulus funding coming from the federal government or from the state to offset those costs, the $85,000 that was returned will go to offset COVID positions. If there is additional stimulus funding coming, then we will be looking at that school psychology position and the tech support position that we'd like to restore, as well as potentially, hopefully adding back the assistant principal that was cut. So we're in a better position. We're not quite where we would like to be, but nobody is, and we recognize that. So fingers crossed for additional stimulus funding. I'm sure you're looking for that at the town level as well. But we really do appreciate the community coming together and making the effort to restore funding so that we could address some of these critical needs this year.
It was incredibly important. And just to give people a little more knowledge about that, the $1,056,000 that we were granted through the state that came from the federal government initially, most of that has gone to support school operations, as it should have done. And the wrinkle about all that is that the way the law was written, those funds can't be spent after December 30th.
Right.
So we now know that there's going to be a new administration in Washington, but that's likely not going to be in place until the end of January. So there may be a gap of a month or a month and a half before we really know what happens next. So we're going to need to figure out how we get through that step of the process to whatever is coming or not coming next.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why we're going to hold on that additional
Right.
appropriation before moving forward with any restorations of positions. We need to make sure we can cover these expenses through the balance of the school year.
Sure, and we did the same on the town side. We didn't fill some positions that went vacant to make sure that we wouldn't have to then turn around and lay people off for the same reason.
Okay.
Thank you. That's great. Great update. Thank you.
One last thing that I would say is that we have had, we have a critical shortage statewide and specifically in this region of substitute teachers. So we had a virtual open house the other day for parents and anybody that might be interested in substituting in the schools, and we'll be holding another one in January. You don't have to be a certified teacher to substitute. We have a plan where people come in and substitute for paraprofessionals or educational assistants, work closely with teachers until they have the skill set and the tools and resources to sub for a classroom teacher. We are openly recruiting. So if you are interested, we will be sending out information about the January webinar, and we'd love to have people drop in. Also, feel free to call. I'm open to talking to anybody that's interested in potentially a career change or interested in subbing or working in any capacity with the schools. So
thank you.
Thank you very much, Ingrid. And, I think that it's easy as a select board member to show appreciation for all of the explanations, the phone calls, the text messages, the emails, everything that you've been able to provide to help bridge understanding gaps in where we are and how we're planning to move forward. But I think more importantly, as a parent of 2 kids in the school system, I can say that we really do appreciate all of the communications that have been put out, the transparency about what's going on. This is a time where there's a lot of high anxiety about what the implications of different spikes in COVID cases or changes in education models will mean for many different households. And I can say that a lot of those communications help to ease that anxiety and help, again, bridge that understanding gap so that we feel a little bit more comfortable with what's going on with our kids. So thank you very much to you, the administration, the school committee, and all of the teachers and staff. We really do appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Our pleasure. Also, I should mention, Kevin, that we have added a COVID dashboard to our district website. So as you mentioned, we have restrictions in terms of HIPAA, what we can share. We try to communicate everything that we can with the community, but you can also go to the website and click on the COVID dashboard for a breakdown of cases in the schools by school building. It'll show you the number of cases in the last 14 days, as well as the cumulative cases. And there's links to the town and the state reports there as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ingrid.
Blythe,
Blythe, did you have any other questions for Ingrid?
No, I didn't. She did a great job.
Yeah, fantastic job. Thank you so much again, Ingrid. Have a great rest of your afternoon. Really do appreciate it.
My pleasure. Have a great day.
So Blythe, we have a couple more items that we wanted to highlight for the community in terms of upcoming events and dates to note. As always, the first thing that we'll note is the upcoming select board meeting schedule. We do have our next meeting scheduled for December 1st, and that'll be at 7 p.m. via Zoom. And then the next one that is scheduled is for December 15th, again, via Zoom at 7 p.m. But we do have a special component to our December 1st meeting, if I'm not mistaken.
We hope to. We're scheduling the town's tax classification hearing. And what that is, it's a required step in the process of setting the tax rate before the town can send out its second half of the year bills. It's always a good opportunity for me to help explain to people that the town doesn't actually set its own tax rate. It's approved by the state, and it's part of the Proposition 2.5 law that passed decades ago that limits the size of tax increases in any given year. Now that we finished our town meeting, the select board meets as soon as the State Department of Revenue has finished their work to determine whether we're going to have more than one classification of tax rates. Right now, the town has one tax rate that applies to all different types of property, whether it's real property, like homes or personal property, and businesses. Some communities have a different mixture of businesses, and commercial and industrial properties will have separate tax rates. And that's really the decision that the board would make. So as I sit here working on finishing up the packet for that December 1st meeting. I'm not sure that we'll be ready to do it that night, but it's our plan. If not, then what we'll talk about that night is scheduling it a few days later. So coming up.
Fantastic, thank you. And I think it's also important to note as it relates to the tax classification hearing. Norfolk is not really in a position to take on a split tax rate, whereas some of our more commercially developed neighbors may be taking advantage of a split tax rate. Norfolk is looking to encourage small business growth in our town. And by applying a higher tax rate to those businesses to potentially offset the burden on the residential component, we could be having an adverse effect in a community like ours. So we'll wait until the tax hearing to hear what's presented, obviously. But I did want to set expectations that up until this point, that has not been something that was identified as an opportunity for our town.
That's very well put. The savings for the average homeowner would likely mean an incredible burden on those small businesses. And if we want them to flourish here, that's something to really take into consideration.
Absolutely, thank you.
Yep.
The next item we wanted to note is the annual Lions Christmas tree sales going on right next to Dunkin' Donuts in Town Center. We're really happy that we were able to have this amidst the pandemic, but it is being done in a safe fashion. All precautions are being taken. The lot is open now for those who are eager to get a Christmas tree into their home for Thanksgiving, and it will be open on weekdays from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. and weekends from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Until all the trees are sold, until they're sold out. So if you're looking for a Christmas tree, that would be a great place to go. If you're looking for me to personally tie it to your car, you can come by between 3 and 6 on Fridays and Thursdays throughout the end of the holiday season.
All right, then.
That does not include you, though, Blythe.
I saw some pretty nice looking trees down there when I drove by.
There you go. We also have another important date coming up. We've highlighted the second week of December as our target to be able to present a wrap-up meeting related to the police station project. Did you have any feedback or insight on that upcoming meeting?
Yes, what we're trying to accomplish is to go backwards to about 2009, when the project really started to get underway and the town meeting approved a building committee to be appointed, through to when the building opened about 10 years later in May of 2019. And to dig into the details about how it came about that the police station is where it is, what the cost of building the land was, what the process was to hire the various consultants the town needed to have to plan for it and then go forth and construct it, and what went well in that process and what didn't, because not everything went well. And there are some real concerns out there in the community about how much we spent and what's left for the fire station, which is in its own significant need to be replaced. It doesn't meet the needs of the town today either. So I've been working with various staff and talking to some of the former members of the building committee to try to get all those details. The goal being we're going to give people a very thorough overview and want their questions about what they've heard or what they don't understand, so we can try to get those questions answered. And maybe people still are disappointed about what was spent and how it came out, but hopefully help everyone understand what we've learned and what we plan to do differently in the future for the next building project that we tackle. So yes, we've targeted that second week. We need to nail down the exact date. We're going to hopefully do that at our December 1st meeting. And we invite questions. I'll put something up on the website and encourage people to write to us or call, so that we want this to be thorough. We want everyone's questions answered. So hopefully people will do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is something that we've been targeting to do for well over a year at this point. And, of note, many of the people who are involved in this presentation were not involved in the town operations at the time when this project was going on. So there's been an inordinate amount of historical work that's been done to be able to catch up on some of the decision points reasoning behind them, some of the operational decisions and whatnot. So I did want to just identify and show some appreciation to all the time that you put in to be able to catch up on these things so that we'll be able to deliver a comprehensive and complete meeting to the community come the second week of December.
I sure hope so. Yep.
And then also, as you did note, we are going to be opening up for any question submissions to be able to include in the presentation. Like you had mentioned, we hope to identify a final date on December 1st at our meeting. We do have to juggle between overlap with other board and committee meetings as well as the upcoming holiday season. So once we are able to nail that day, we'll also share the mediums that residents can use to share some of the questions or things that they'd like to hear discussed during that forum.
Yes, we will.
Thank you very much, Blythe. And did you want to throw in a quick note or a preliminary trailer for our upcoming budget season?
Only that it's preliminary. So we actually do start our budget process in December in asking our departments to turn in their budget proposals for the next year. And on a macro level, things in Norfolk are slightly different than the rest of other parts of the state. We're fortunate and appreciative of our residents and commercial businesses that tax payments are on schedule and people are making those. That's very welcomed. That's the lion's share of our revenue, right? But what we don't know is what state aid will look like. And for Norfolk, about 10% of our budget comes from that source. In the past year, the state was able to level fund what we'd gotten last year. What for us was FY20, and that made a difference. That was what in part, what we were able to return to the schools that Dr. Alardi just talked about. But the state did that using some of this federal stimulus that came, and we all don't know what is going to happen going forward. So we don't usually get that information from the state in a non-pandemic year until late January. So that's why I say it's a little too soon to say. But if I had to guess at this point, I would simply say that we're going to be cautious because we don't know when we'll be on the other side of the pandemic, and it will take time for the economy to recover. And so at this point, I don't see us making any significant changes to our budget until we have that information. So sorry not to be clear, but that's the best I can do right now.
Oh, and we're just coming a week off of Fall Town meeting, which was pretty seamless, relatively seamless. So I think that we can give ourselves a couple of weeks to get everything together as we prep for the police station meeting, and then look forward to a highly anticipated FY22 budget season. Well, that's everything that we have today. That seemed like a lot. I don't want to minimize it by saying that's everything, but that is all the topics that we had noted for today's show. Blythe, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Just wish everybody a very happy and especially healthy Thanksgiving. It's a tough time of year. I know I'm not getting to do the things with my family that I would have liked to, and I'm sure most of our residents are not, and that's so disappointing. But I just wish everybody well and safe, and we'll all get through this. And looking forward to 2021.
I think we all are. All right. Well, thank you very much once again, Blythe. We do appreciate it. Thank you for watching today. And as Blythe had said, we do want to wish everybody a very safe and healthy Thanksgiving. And we'll see you in December. Thanks so much.
Yep. Bye.